Lovely. Okay. Looks like we've got a few people still joining, but welcome everyone to our May webinar. We've got Greg with us today to go through his presentation titled Retirement Then and Now, Thriving in a New Era of Financial Freedom. We are aiming for the presentation to be between 20 minutes and 30 minutes, including obviously a section for questions and answers towards the end. So if there's anything throughout the presentation that you would like to ask some questions on or have clarified, then just pop it over in the chat box that should be over to the right hand side of your screen, and we will go through those all at the end. Like I said, that should be available for you to see on the right hand side. There will be a small survey towards the end of the presentation as well. We'll leave that up for about 5 minutes at the end, so if you do have a couple of seconds just to fill that out, obviously that would be really appreciated on our side. Otherwise, Greg, I will leave you to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess, and thanks for setting the scene for this webinar. I'm just seeing a few more names come in, a few recognizable names come in. So welcome everyone. I've decided to be upbeat about the theme or the vibe of this webinar in terms of talking retirement. So noted on the shirt choice today. So I thought let me just sort of embrace the theme, thriving. So yeah, just one or two more people to join. So yeah, while they are joining, yeah, went for sort of an emotive theme here in terms of the subject for this webinar, because this is a new era of financial freedom, but also just in the retirement space, and we're going to set out the context as to what that all means. But yeah, risk disclaimer, you can just read that on the screen. This is an informative webinar, so it's not meant to obviously be taken as advice. Obviously, myself and the other advisors at AWM would be happy to have discussions with you post the webinar to discuss anything specific to you and your situation. So that is great. Yeah, just a little bit about myself for the people who don't know me. Started with AWM when we opened the Cape Town office. So started out as one of the pensions analysts focusing on final salary schemes. You'll recall around that time pension freedoms were coming into effect, so a lot more flexibilities around pensions. So really cut my teeth in that space, and then since 2019 been advising front of camera, as it were, to our clients at AWM. Okay, so a few more names have dropped into the attendees list, so that is great. And perfect job. Webinar agenda, as Jess said, we're aiming for 20 minutes. This is sort of not going to be as technically heavy as previous webinars have been from myself and colleagues, but this is just sort of to get the discussion going and to kind of shape how we view retirement, and also just to kind of draw a line in the sand, because how did our parents have it? How did what was it like retiring in the 90s, in the 70s, in the 60s, etc. So yeah, that's what we're going to start off with, how retirement has evolved then versus now. And then we're also going to talk about a way that we can get £50,000 worth of an income completely free of tax, completely free of income tax. So we're going to discuss that, as well as the key risks and opportunities, and then yes, Q&A at the end. So if you can save those questions, or if you do have questions throughout this webinar, you can just drop it in the chat, and then Jess and I will be able to address them at the end of the webinar. Great. Okay, so we'll be 5 minutes in, so I think I'm going to get into the content here. But yeah, retirement landscape. What happened then, as it were? So defined benefit schemes. I've recognized a few of the names on the call already would have had or still do have defined benefit schemes, but retirement landscape back in the day, as it were, was the fact that you had your DB scheme. That was going to be the income for the rest of your life. It would have you had that income certainty, as in it would increase by the GMP uplift or the retail prices index, the CPI, RPI, depending on the segments, all those technical aspects around final salaries was the norm, basically. And yeah, fixed or more sort of steadfast retirement ages, as in if your normal retirement age was 65, a lot of people would have targeted that age as the complete end date. So a lot more certainty as to when your retirement age was going to be, or when you would retire fully, and your income certainty was there for sure, guaranteed by the scheme and also by the protections that the government put in place. Also, earlier state pension ages. I mean, looking at state pension ages throughout history. I mean, currently it's at 66, but I mean, from the 1970s to the 1990s, it was 65 for men and 60 for women. That has now got to a stage where it's equalized, first of all. So men and women have the same pension age, and it's at 66, soon to go up to 67. That's going to be going up to 67 between 2026 and 2028. There are future increases with state pension ages, so it's at increasing to 67. It's going to increase to 68, but not to get the mood low in terms of talking retirement and where we are in the world, but they guarantee that 68 date at a future eventuality in 2037 is going to be honored. Might not sort of happen in reality, depending on where the country goes and external factors. Limited personal control. So a lot of the themes that we're going to be discussing later on, when we're talking about all the flexibilities that you do have in this day and age, you'll be able to sort of compare it to the fact that previously you didn't have any type of flexibility. You literally would have received your income, your final salary income, and then your state pension income, and there will be no deviation in terms of levels of income. You get that income. There'll be no ways of lowering your tax, income tax paid at that point, because of those low flexibilities. Good. So retirement landscape now. I decided to put a picture of a very hip elder gentleman in this slide here. I think the red beanie was a bit too much, but looking at where we are now today, we've got DC pension pots, personal savings. We've got flexi access drawdown and annuity blends. Annuities have been a lot more relevant in the last couple of years with based on the increase in interest rates. So you can really see over those 2 bullet points that we're introducing more vehicles, more retirement vehicles into the landscape. 1 or 2 of you on the call will have a defined benefit pension to include into the mix here. So already you've got, yes, they're all pensions, but you already got multiple pensions, all with their own policy provisions, terms and conditions, potentially safeguarded benefits, and in those respective pensions. Another key thing here is longer lifespans and phased retirements. We are living longer, which is obviously the trend, and you can see that with the state pension ages increasing. But also, it's also the flexibilities around phased retirements, and also the need honestly to continue working. So that phased retirement is a new theme. That income certainty that you had then, where 65, that's my date, that's my age. I'm sort of hanging up my boots at that point, darning tools. More flexibility nowadays, and that's why people are doing that phased retirements. Digital nomads working from anywhere in the world, taking sort of month sabbaticals, all those things. That's coming into effect right now. So what that all means is just literally just greater responsibility on yourself as the retiree to manage your investments and manage your withdrawals. So yes, from certainty to flexibility, that's to sort of sum up then and now, that's what we've got. So DB schemes close to new entrants, and I mean, quite literally, they're dying off in terms of those DB schemes because of the fact that older generations are obviously drawing from them and have been for the last, say, 40, 50 years. So those are not a thing anymore in terms of private defined benefit schemes. You've got the 2015, I alluded to it a little bit earlier, the pension freedoms unlocked flexibility. So around that time, with interest rates being a lot lower than they are today, and the fact that you could transfer final salary schemes, unlocked a lot of liquidity, a lot of pension assets going from DB schemes over to DC schemes to again provide death benefits and that flexibility. So you previously, for instance, receiving £60,000 as a DB income, now you don't need to sort of you don't need to be held to that as a higher rate taxpayer. You can obviously have the flexibilities around different investment vehicles, which we'll touch on shortly. Rise of ISAs and GIAs as supplemental income sources. So we're going to touch on that shortly. ISAs, obviously, capital gains, income tax free. GIAs, not so much, but it's just the management of these type of investment vehicles that we're going to touch on. So yeah, from certainty to flexibility would be a good summation of from then versus now. Okay, so key challenges for today's retirees. I did enjoy this picture here, obviously sitting on laptops nowadays, which juxtaposition to retirees in the 80s and the 90s. But yeah, longevity risk, outliving your assets. That's the key thing. Again, previously DBs, that's for the rest of your life. Now it's a case of you've got a finite pot of money, and quite frankly, you might deplete that pot of money before the end of your life. Yes, there is obviously the state pension, but that's going to be that might have been a supplemental part of your income at that point. So sequence of returns, risk in early retirement. I mean, this comes into what's happening in this day and age. We've seen it recently in April. The market lows that we had in April, that would have affected your retirement assets at that point. And also, if you were drawing on those assets at that point, then you would have been crystallizing losses, which is a worry when it comes to market performance, which is that risk element of what you're going to be experiencing in retirement. Persistent inflation and rising costs. We've seen that for the last couple of years, since we sort of came out of COVID and demand outstripped supply in goods and services. So those are the challenges that we are experiencing, in addition to the tax drag on withdrawals. So looking at that here, obviously inflation rates are normalizing and trending downwards. There is obviously the volatility around the US trade policy that will have an impact from that point of view. But the key takeaway here is the fact that you, as a retiree in this day and age, need to be kept or need to be aware of what is happening in the sense of that persistent inflation and rising costs. Okay. So key opportunities here. So obviously put the problems in place, the challenges in place, and looking at the opportunities. So tailored withdrawals aligned to lifestyle goals, tax planning across multiple wrappers, which we're going to touch on, global diversification opportunities, and legacy and intergenerational planning. These are all aspects that need to have conversations and be managed in isolation of each other as how it impacts your overall strategy of retirement, because that's what it is at this point in time. Retirement, it's a strategy that needs to be managed as such. Looking at the tax-free allowances, just a recap here because we're going to be delving in. I do apologize for the editing here. Personal allowance, tax-free income up to this amount. I'm going to just run through this quickly. Dividend allowance of £500. Those are tax-free dividends incomes up to this amount. CGT annual exempt amount at £3,000. A few years ago, that was £12,000. Personal savings allowance, £1,000 for basic rates, £500 for higher rates, and £0 for additional rates. And then the starting rate for savings up to £5,000. So that's available if your other income, excluding savings, is less than 17,570. Okay, so that's just a recap of your allowances, and we're going to see how those apply to this £50,000 optimized income strategy. So you'll see here in the column on the right-hand side, tax paid $0. So if you draw an income from your pension of 12,570, I'm assuming that you are younger than state pension age at this point in time, but you've got the pension income below your personal allowance, so covered entirely by your personal allowance. Then you introduce aspects like offshore bonds, aspects like general investment accounts, where you can now take £5,000, which would be taxed as savings incomes, which would be within your starting rate for savings. So already there's your 17,570. Then furthermore, you have cash sitting in a bank, for instance. That's where you get your savings interest of £1,000 covered by personal savings allowance for a basic rate taxpayer, which ultimately we're aiming to be here. ISA withdrawals. Okay, so this is indicative. Obviously, £27,000 is quite a large amount to take out of your ISA, but that is completely tax-free. This might be viewed as a filler. So this 50K, this might be 35K, and this ISA withdrawals could get you to that 35K as a optimized income strategy. Last two aspects here, dividends from a GIA, £500 covered by dividend allowance, and your capital gains, again from a GIA, £3,000 within the CGT annual exempt amount. So that's £50,000 and you haven't paid any income tax on it. What will happen here when you receive your state pension is that your state pension will fall in line with the pension income. Current state pension is £230 per week. So that will fall within the pension income, and then you don't take any further pension income on top of that, because that will be taxed. Okay, so yeah, £50,000, zero income tax, which is great. So just a recap on offshore and onshore bonds. So investment bonds are tax wrappers, often used for medium to long term. So the returns are returns roll up gross or gross of higher rate tax. So that's the offshore versus onshore, with tax only due when withdrawals or chargeable events occur. But this is the key thing here. It's up to 5% of the original investment can be withdrawn per year, tax deferred. So that's the 5% that we can be taking out on an annual basis in that strategy. Okay. So looking at a sample for a single person, I mean, this as I said, from an ISA point of view in that previous example, here we've got 12,570 from a pension drawdown. Okay, we could opt for to crystallize £12,500 tax-free cash from a pension, £500 dividends, £3,000 capital gains, and then you might not have any ISA assets at that point in time. So then you draw from the pension at 21,430, which means that your effective rate of tax at that point is 8.6%. So already by managing this, then you know that in this tax year, your effective rate of tax is 8.6%, which is a win. So your retirement assets are not being eroded by paying the 20% tax in this tax year. Then we've got a sample. I put a sample of, say, 60K income mix. So now you're splitting the fact that both partners take pension drawdown up to that personal allowance amount. In this example here, we've got ISA withdrawals from partner A, ISA and offshore bond gains from partner B, and that gets you to 60K. And again, zero income tax, which again is great. Looking at maybe another case study here, Sarah, age 62. That is probably not Sarah on the left-hand side. But yeah, she's got a pension pot, so a DC pension, valued at 400,000. She's got ISA savings 150 and a GIA at 80, totaling 630. Now, I've modeled this at 50K. Now, don't get me wrong, she is 62, and 50K on a pot of 630 is quite a large income amount. But this is just showing you the fact that with those assets, she is able to, as a 62-year-old, pay zero income tax. So again, just reaffirms the fact that there's the ISA withdrawal that tops it up to that amount, to that 50K amount. She could elect to take potentially more income from her pension and not deplete the ISAs. And then that's where that effective rate of income tax comes into effect. So what's the action plan? What's the checklist? As I said earlier, retirement is not you get your P60 every year. The checks come in monthly. Now it's more of an action plan, more of a strategy, more management is needed. And potentially people will groan at that because now it's just sort of more things to manage, and you just actually want to just sort of let loose and chill out. But that's not the case in this day and age. You need to have an action plan, need to have a checklist where you are aware of all your wrappers and your allowances. I've just recapped a few of them: savings rate, personal savings allowance, CGT exemptions, dividend allowances. You need to be aware of those allowances and how to utilize them. Cash flow, so map spending needs versus inflation, as well as stress test withdrawal rates under different markets. This comes to cash flow projections, cash flow modeling, which we would have done with a few of the members on this call. Very important to just visually be able to see under different market conditions, under different growth rates, inflation rates, the longevity of your funds. Excuse me. Very, very important here to stress test them, to see what happens if a market event like Trump's Liberation Day on 2nd of April were to happen in the future, and what impact. Because at this point in time, if you are entering retirement, essentially you've been paying yourself throughout your career an income for the rest of your life. That's the type of flexibilities, that's the type of concept that we're trying to I'm trying to explain here. So obviously the last one, seek regulated advice and update plan annually. Very important. Very important that you do that. You have that ongoing management, because at the end of the day, if you make a misstep, in terms of paying higher tax, in terms of crystallizing a pension incorrectly, for instance, then those financial hits that you might take in that regard, that might have compensated for taking that financial advice. And on top of that, there is obviously access to free financial advice with people like PensionWise, for instance. Okay, so wrapping up, versus that whole sort of retirement then versus now. So just want to get my notes here. So yeah, retirement back then, simple. You have your final salary, you've worked in that company for 30 years, or maybe you've worked in 2 companies for your entire career of 30 years, and you receive your predictable income and you can plan accordingly. You would have got annual statements saying that you're the member of the scheme and this is what you can expect at 65, and you know that yes, it might go up by CPI or RPI, but fairly certain in terms of what you're going to be getting. So it was steady, reliable, and also largely out of your hands. Today, obviously, things look a lot different, as I've sort of set out here. So we're in an era of flexibility, freedom, and unfortunately, complexity. But that's going to be the sort of the opportunities that you need to take out of this new era, is that you're in control. Ultimately, you decide how and when you are taxed. So somebody drawing a 60,000 or receiving a £60,000 final salary pension, there's no flexibility. He or she will be paying that tax. But we've laid out a few strategies to essentially manage that, decide when and how you pay your tax. So key takeaways here. And might be sort of reiterating the position here, but you're not handed a retirement income anymore. It's strategically built through multiple investment vehicles. Flexibility, no longer locked into those rigid rules. So you've got more levers, I should say, to plan your income and your lifestyle in retirement. So the tax system, as I laid out a little bit earlier, excuse me, can work for you and not sort of burden you in the sense that, or be punitive, I should say, where you're potentially making missteps. So yeah, this isn't just about numbers. It's about clarity, confidence, and freedom. Sounds a bit salesy, but that's the name of the game here. You don't want to have worked for 35 years and then decide to hang up your boots, and then ultimately you might feel out of your depth at that point in time, which unfortunately or fortunately does happen, because it just means that you need to obviously educate yourself and to maybe look for some assistance. So final thoughts. Run a little bit over, so hopefully there are a few questions coming in. But yeah, retirement, not as easy as it once was. There's going to be a lot more, obviously, complexities that are laid out, but ultimately, the final thought here is that you decide how you get taxed and when you get taxed. So that's my final thought. Thanks everyone for joining. If there are any questions, Jess has just rejoined.
Yeah, we haven't had any questions come through just yet, so we'll leave it for a couple of moments just to see if anyone wants to pop any in. And I'll just pop a quick reminder in that obviously we will be sending out the recording and the slides of Greg's presentation to anyone that's signed up for the webinar, which is also a good reminder that in future, if ever you are interested in one of our topics and know that you cannot attend, it's still a good idea to sign up, because you will then receive a copy of the slides and the recording as well, usually within 24 hours of the presentation. for you to use or go through at home. And as Greg mentioned earlier, any questions that you do have for our advisors, please do get in touch. I'm sure they'll be happy to go through anything with you post presentation as well. We will also be popping a small survey up, as I mentioned, and one of the questions of the survey is if there are any topics that you would like to see be included in this webinar series for our advisors to go through. We will obviously pop them into the mix going forward. So please do let us know if you have any suggestions or if there's anything you would like to see us kind of touch upon going forwards. Then obviously I can pop that towards the advisors. But yeah, no, nothing has come through from anyone. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and put the survey up and leave that there for a couple of minutes. And as mentioned, any questions that come to mind later on, just give Greg a shout and we'll go through them with you. Cool. Thanks everyone. See you at the next one.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.